In Dallas, Texas, Tasha Dunnigan is willing to do whatever it takes to provide for her man.
She came under the influence of this man, and he pushed her to become a prostitute.
But when Tasha's fired, her boyfriend talks her into a risky plan of revenge.
When she pulled her gun out and he immediately pulled his, that's when she started shooting.
She had no idea that this was going to ruin her life.
She wanted him to love her, so she'd do whatever he wanted, no matter what he asked.
And later, in Los Angeles, nurse Connie Ickpo is known for her generous ways.
Everybody she came in contact with seemed to think that hers was being the perfect person.
But Connie and her pastor husband aren't as angelic as they seem.
This scheme was driven by unadulterated greed.
So the minute she let Christopher in her life, she starts down this dark and narrow path.
There are hundreds of thousands of women in prison at any given time in the U.S. These are the true stories of women who committed heinous crimes in the name of love. For my man. In Dallas, Texas, Tasha Dunnigan has lived a hard life.
Tasha grew up poor, without a lot of family support. Tasha did not graduate from high school.
With a lack of education, it's not easy for Tasha to find steady work. For the next decade, she moves aimlessly from one low-paying position to another.
She wasn't the type of person that could go out and get a job working as a secretary. So in terms of options on making a living, she was really, really limited.
It limits you because in this market, everybody, for the most part, employers are looking for qualified applicants that have a college degree or higher.
By the age of 34, Tasha meets a handsome, smooth talker named Henry Sanchez, who sweeps her off her feet.
Henry did not have a legal job. He was a low-level drug dealer, and at the time he was primarily living off of Tasha.
And to pay the bills, Tasha takes a job at a local 24-hour massage parlor.
On the outside, it was a massage parlor. On the inside, it was a brothel.
It was a great opportunity. I think that you should at least take a shot at it.
Henry convinced her that she could make more money than either of them could in any other job if she just started turning tricks.
Tasha was a victim of Henry's control. This was a person who ruled with an iron fist. He was completely in charge. Whatever he wanted, she did. She just couldn't stand up to him.
She really, really just wanted to make some money and make ends meet so that she can pay her bills and do what she needed to do.
Despite the illicit nature of the job, it's the answer to all their money problems.
What is that?
She was making a lot of money every day.
Over 1,000, maybe over 2,000.
And so she would bring that home and give that to Henry.
I'm so proud of you. Imagine how much money you're going to make in the next few weeks.
When you live with someone who pressured you to become a prostitute, it beats you down. She loved him. And no matter how badly he treated her, she wanted him to love her. So she would try harder to do whatever he wanted, no matter what he asked.
That's my girl.
But after only a few months, Henry's gravy train comes to an abrupt halt when Tasha is suspected of pocketing some of the cash she was supposed to hand over to the business for herself.
You do know I need to see all your money.
That is on.
No.
The massage parlor's owner had a business of trust.
That is mine.
I clearly know it isn't.
He didn't want to give Tasha any chances. If he couldn't trust his employees, they were gone out the door right then and there.
So she was fired 2 months after she started working there.
It's a blow to Tasha, but she's more frightened by how Henry will react.
She was really devastated and heartbroken because she was losing the ability to make as much money as she had been making, and she dreaded telling Henry about this.
How are you?
He saw her as a meal ticket. She was someone to send out into the world and say, go make some money and bring it home so I can have shelter and I can have food and I can be with you when I want to.
What's going on?
As suspected, Henry doesn't take the news well.
They fired me.
You gotta be kidding me. What did you do?
Henry was in a fit of rage when he found out that she was fired. After all, you know, she used to make a lot of cash that she wasn't making anymore.
What am I going to do?
I don't know. I need some time to think.
With their primary source of income gone, Tasha and Henry are back to struggling to pay their bills. A few weeks after the dismissal, they're in dire straits.
This is an eviction notice.
Financial situation had gotten to a point where they were about to be evicted from their apartment.
Pay the rent?
Tasha didn't have any place to go. Henry didn't have any place to go. They were very desperate for money.
You lost your job last week, and I told you we got to do something about it. Did you go back?
His anger built and built, and he decided he wanted to get even with the people who took away their means of support.
No, it was my money.
Well, maybe we should.
And how are we going to do that?
Facing eviction, Henry comes up with a plan that will solve all of their problems in one fell swoop.
Henry has an idea that will get revenge on Tasha's boss and also get them the cash they so desperately needed.
You got to make this right.
He's going to hold up the massage parlor.
Your money, it's your work.
Because of the nature of the business, a robbery would go unreported.
Because it was such a cover for a prostitution house, they certainly thought that if something like this were to happen, they wouldn't call the police.
You work there. You know
That,
what you're doing.
coupled with Tasha's first-hand knowledge of the operation, will make it an easy score.
During the day or what?
Tasha knew the best time to go there. She also knew the layout of the building. She knew that they had no safe. And the way the money worked is the managers would keep the money in their pocket.
I mean, we would have to like force.
But Tasha will need some convincing.
How would we do that? They have guns.
Tasha said she didn't want to hurt anyone. He kept pushing her and pushing her and pushing her until she said yes.
Tasha felt like she had to do what Henry wanted her to do. She wanted to please him, keep him happy.
2 or 3 guys I've seen.
Tasha tells him the place is like a fortress. You need an appointment and need to be buzzed in.
The way that it works is that they knock on the door, an armed manager comes and escorts them inside. There, they find a girl that they would like to have the massage services with. And then once the service is completed, then payment is taken.
But you could go.
The plan was for Tasha to show up. She knew that the door was going to be locked and tell them that she had lost her cell phone charger. And then once inside, she was supposed to go to the back of the building and open a back door for Henry.
What about the gun?
Once Henry is inside, he will demand that the night manager hand over all the night's cash earnings. He doesn't want to take any chances with the armed proprietor, so he asks his cousin to go along for the ride.
So what's going on?
He got his cousin involved so he could have one more gun with him. One more gun means more control over what's going to happen once they're inside.
They would have the manpower to scare or perhaps overpower the one manager and make him give up the cash.
That's the best way to go.
We're gonna get this, Tasha.
It seems like the perfect plan, but Tasha's not so convinced.
She felt compelled. She had no other choice. She was facing eviction. They had no money. Tasha hopes if she does exactly what Henry wants, nobody's going to get hurt.
A few days later, the trio puts their plan into action.
Tasha.
At sunrise, Henry hands Tasha a .38 caliber gun to put in her purse, and they drive over to the massage parlor a few miles from their home.
Robbing the place early in the morning also would have meant that the manager on duty would have had all the cash from their busiest time on hand. And since all their cash just went into the manager's pocket, at the end of that shift, it all would have just been sitting there, ripe for the picking.
Once on scene, everyone moves into position. Tasha rings the bell at the front door.
The manager looks out the window and sees Tasha at the door and lets her inside.
Tasha doesn't miss a beat, even when she spots another girl at the desk.
The only other person who was in the building when Tasha arrived is her friend Maria, who is another worker. And she had just come off her shift and she was in the lobby area waiting for her ride.
Did you need something?
Yeah, actually, I think I left my charger here.
Tasha says that she can't find her cell phone charger. She thinks it might be there somewhere. So could she please look around? And he says sure.
Outside, Henry and Timothy stand by for Tasha to open the rear door. Inside, Tasha keeps the lost charger distraction going, so she works her way toward the back. But there's a problem.
The night manager happened to look out a window, and he saw Henry and his cousin leaning up against a wall with their guns out like they were trying to hide.
And that's when Henry's perfect plan begins to fall apart. And what happens next will send Tasha's world into a death spiral.
What are you doing?
They thought that this was going to be easy in, easy out. They thought that anything like this would happen.
Henry was everything to her. She was willing to risk everything for him.
The two of them together were double trouble.
In Dallas, Texas, just a few months after 34-year-old Tasha Dunnigan is fired from her job at a massage parlor, she lets her boyfriend Henry Sanchez talk her into getting revenge via armed robbery.
There were very strong elements of control and dominance in this relationship. And so if Tasha really wanted to stay with him, there were just certain rules that she had to abide by. So I think that it really took her down a wrong path. I don't know if she would have normally done had she not been with him and in this relationship.
They're desperate for money, and in his mind, this is the perfect plan to come up with quick money.
With their plan underway, Tasha waits for the right opportunity to let her boyfriend and his cousin, Timothy Johnson, inside.
It might be in the bag. Yeah.
There were no customers there at that time. It was just the manager and one of the girls that worked there.
But out of the gate, Henry's plan starts to unravel.
The night manager had noticed Henry and Timothy outside, so he was suspicious.
Suspicious, the manager senses a security risk.
And to protect Tasha, he takes her to the back door to let her out safely.
He opens the back door and he looks out and he sees two guys coming toward him.
The night manager quickly slams the door shut and locks it.
When he turns around, he sees Tasha holding a gun to him.
What are you doing?
And he says, "Please don't do this."
Is this what you wanted to do?
And he begs her to back down, and she doesn't.
Instead, the night manager pulls out his own gun.
Tasha was scared. Things weren't going the way they're supposed to.
Tasha panicked once the manager refused to comply with her demand to open the back door.
Henry was waiting for her to unlock the door, and she was willing to do whatever it took to make that happen.
Even if it means pulling the trigger.
The manager is shot in the stomach and he falls to the ground. At that point, Tasha runs away to let her accomplices in.
Tasha is so rattled at this point because she doesn't know whether the manager is alive or dead, and so the only thing she can focus on is making sure that Henry and Timothy can get into the back door. And whatever she does, she wants to make sure that Henry's plan is met to the letter.
Tasha, did you shoot him?
Tasha's former co-worker, Maria, watches in horror as the horrific scene unfolds in front of her.
She's hysterical.
Where's the money, man?
You know, she's really upset. She has no idea what was happening, and she now is a witness.
Where's the money, man? Come on. We're not joking, man.
The manager is wounded but still alive and takes cover.
I don't know where the money is.
He retreated to behind a counter that was there in the business, kind of used as a shield for himself.
Come on, man. Just give us the money.
With money on their mind, the robbers stick to the plan.
Henry and Timothy approach the manager and ask for the money.
I don't know where the money is.
And the manager says no, and they start a shootout.
When the bullets start flying, Maria cowers in fear.
So she was a liability. Timothy takes her into another room where he shoots her in the stomach.
Tasha's worst fears are coming true.
Tasha must have been scared out of her wits. She had so many things coming down on her.
Meanwhile, the gunfight between Henry and the manager spins out of control. And Henry is hit in the leg. The would-be robbers have no choice but to retreat empty-handed.
The whole plan had gone south. Henry was shot. He was bleeding profusely.
Still hidden behind the counter, the night manager calls 911.
I don't think they're expecting the night manager to defend himself or defend the business as ferociously as he did.
Drive!
Timothy and Tasha get Henry back to the car.
We gotta get him to the hospital. No, hospital, no.
Tasha gets behind the wheel, but tries desperately to keep her wits about her.
The one thing she was really scared of came true. People got hurt. The manager was shot. Her coworker, Maria, was shot. And now her partner, her significant other, Henry, was shot.
With Henry bleeding out, Tasha can barely keep the car on the road.
So they realized that Henry's condition was life-threatening, and it wasn't as easy as just running away. They had to seek medical assistance.
Tasha finds herself in a no-win situation.
No!
Yes!
No, hospital.
We have to go!
No!
Henry needs medical help. He's been shot in the leg, but at the same time, they need to hide from the police. So Tasha has a decision to make. Is this about her own safety and Henry not getting the medical attention, or getting Henry to a doctor or an emergency room at the peril of being caught?
This was not supposed to happen.
You gotta get to the hospital.
Man, do not go to the hospital.
He thought it would be an easy in and out job. Tasha did all of this in the end for the love of her man.
And later in Los Angeles, Connie Ikpo's man will give her a taste of the good life by having her make a deal with the devil.
So the minute she let Christopher in her life, she starts down this dark and narrow path.
This is a shell game, and Connie's an active participant. In fact, she's just all in.
A lot of Tasha's resistance to Henry's plan stems from the fact that she was close with her former co-workers at the massage parlor.
Tasha had a lot of downtime waiting for the next client, so her and the other girls really started to build a really deep rapport. She created a really great relationship with their managers. They knew her very well, and she knew them too.
Tasha Dunnigan has to choose between saving her boyfriend's life or getting away after a botched revenge robbery attempt in Dallas, Texas.
No hospital. This was not supposed to happen.
You gotta get to the hospital.
Against her accomplice Timothy's objections, Tasha drives straight to the emergency room.
Tasha wanted to save Henry no matter what the risk. If Tasha didn't care about Henry, she could have just taken him home and said, we'll try to get the bullet out.
I told you not to come here, Tasha.
He had to come.
No, just leave. Go somewhere else.
Nurse, please. Please.
No.
When they get to the hospital and pull over, Timothy flees. He runs.
That's when she realizes she's on her own.
Timothy knew that once they got to the hospital would call the police to report a gunshot victim.
Doctor, please help
But Tasha doesn't care.
Tasha's emotional state at that point was primarily focused on getting Henry to the hospital and trying to make sure he doesn't die there in the car.
No, please help.
Tasha loved Henry, and she did everything for him, and he's the reason that she did this. So she wasn't going to let him die, but she also risked her life by deciding to save him.
Somebody tried to carjack us.
You know how long
To cover their tracks, she lies to the hospital staff, saying they're the victims of a carjacking.
She's a survivor, so she comes up with an explanation as to what happened.
But what Tasha doesn't know is that the night manager at the massage parlor has survived, and he's called 911.
When the police arrive, they find Maria dead. The manager was able to identify Tasha and tell them exactly what happened.
I locked the door.
The manager was able to give the police her name and the description of the two men.
This description is almost identical to the report the hospital has already provided the authorities.
Henry has a gunshot wound, and it's hospital's protocol that when something like that happens, they automatically have to notify the police department.
At the crime scene, they get a report of 3 people showing up at the hospital, one of them with a serious gunshot wound, and they put 2 and 2 together pretty quickly.
By the time Henry is wheeled into surgery, Tasha is already in custody.
She chose to stay with Henry at the hospital. She knew they were probably going to get caught. I think that also kind of shows how deep her involvement with him was.
Tasha's whole world comes crumbling down on her because she doesn't know whether Henry's going to make it.
Why would you tell me the truth?
Under interrogation, Tasha stands her ground.
My car.
Tasha tries her best to stick to the carjacking story, but there's too many holes in the story.
I don't know. We were carjacked.
But the news of Maria's passing definitely hits a nerve.
Maria's dead, and Tasha doesn't know whether she's going to prison for this. So Tasha's got to be devastated.
Tasha was very remorseful about Maria getting killed. In fact, Tasha had talked about how good a friend Maria had been to her during the time that she worked there.
And police have one more ace up their sleeve.
When a police officer tells Tasha that the night manager identified her as the woman involved in the robbery, she breaks down.
They should have seen the crime.
Look, maybe I was there.
You know this.
After hours of questioning, Tasha finally admits to shooting the night manager at the massage parlor,
He drew a gun on me.
but claims that he drew his gun on her first.
She admitted to shooting him, but she said that she did it in self-defense.
I was going to leave out the back door.
And when push comes to shove, Tasha finally turns on her man.
This is all Henry's fault.
She points the blame on Henry because it was his idea, and he was the one who really started all of this. He was the one that convinced her of what happened and convinced her that they needed to seek revenge. And so she really blamed everything on him.
Like the night manager, Henry Sanchez survives his wounds and is arrested promptly after he is in stable condition. 2 days later, police track down Timothy Johnson hiding out in a Dallas motel.
The police had gotten a tip from someone on where he was, and that's where they found him.
A year after the robbery, a Dallas jury convicts Tasha Dunagan of capital murder. She's handed down a tough punishment: life in prison without parole. Her boyfriend Henry Sanchez and his cousin Timothy Johnson each get the same.
This was really about her relationship with Henry. Under other circumstances, I don't know if she would have done this on her own. So she really did it all for him.
Tasha felt like she had to do what Henry wanted her to do. She wanted to please him, keep him happy, and he was just a very bad influence on her.
So many women get involved in bad situations. They do things for what they think is love, and they ruin other people's lives and they ruin their own lives.
Prison has a way of allowing people to think. I mean, after all, you have nothing but time on your hands.
And I walked to the bag, he walked with me.
She was now far removed from that very domineering, dominating relationship that she was in with Henry. So she finally does come to the proper realization that he led her down a path of danger and a really screwed up life.
Trying to keep her boyfriend happy with a fistful of cash destroyed Tasha Dunagan's life. In Los Angeles, Connie Ikpo is all about getting money for nothing in the name of everlasting love. Even from a young age, Connie seemed destined to be an overachiever.
Connie was raised in Nigeria, a very hardworking single-parent mother who raised her kids to be very hardworking. They were very pressed on getting an education, which they all seem to do.
By her early 20s, Connie becomes a nurse in Nigeria, helping those in need.
She was industrious. She was well-liked. She was a hard worker.
A decade later, Connie yearns for more. And during a fateful trip to America, she decides to take a leap of faith in Houston, Texas.
She came to visit a cousin of hers who was living there, and she got interest in wanting to stay, enrolling in the university there.
The 35-year-old immediately gets to work, building a whole new life for herself by continuing her education in the healthcare field.
She was confident, she was responsible. She was in school for something all the time, whether it was a bachelor's degree, which she needed to get here in the United States, or her master's degree, which she did complete.
Connie is like a lot of immigrants who come to this country. They come for a better opportunity. She knows what she wants. She knows what she has to do, even if it means working harder than her peers.
But Connie's also determined to enjoy her new life by spending time with friends and relatives. And it's during one of these gatherings where Connie is introduced to a fellow Nigerian who's in town visiting from California.
Christopher was a Nigerian citizen, migrated to the United States, seemed to be somewhat successful in the hair salon business in Los Angeles.
The two instantly bond over their mutual desire to help those less fortunate.
They both were in the same community circles. He was doing volunteer work, which certainly appealed to Connie's nurturing caregiving side.
Is this when you were in Nigeria?
In Nigeria.
Connie's attracted to Christopher primarily because they share the same culture. They both come from Nigeria. He's been in the States longer than she has, so he's already started working and making something of himself. He's achieved some success. And for her, this is the ideal guy. This is a man who is ambitious just like she is.
Shortly after their first meeting, Christopher returns to LA. But the distance only makes their love grow stronger.
They had a long-distance telephonic relationship for a number of months and other subsequent visits. Finally, she moved to Los Angeles and they moved in together.
He immediately proposes. They go back to Nigeria to be married, and they come back to LA to begin their lives.
Connie quickly settles into her new life with Christopher. She takes a job as a nurse, and Christopher continues to run his successful hair salons. But the couple isn't satisfied with just achieving their own personal success. They want to make a difference in the world.
Christopher and Connie were already very well respected in their communities.
And Christopher already knows how he wants to give back. He tells Connie he wants them to become ordained ministers and open a storefront church.
They convert one of the salons into their church. Connie likes the idea of becoming a pastor.
People call them Pastor Chris and Pastor Connie. And the name of their church was Arms of Grace Church.
But when Connie puts her faith in her man over God, her sins will destroy her life forever.
Christopher and Connie are not the angels that they thought they were.
And their church will become the perfect cover for a $1 million bamboozle, for which Satan himself would be proud.
This scheme was driven by unadulterated greed.
Nigerian immigrant Connie Ikpo is living the American dream in Los Angeles, California. Not only has she married the love of her life, Christopher Iruke, but her husband is determined to share their good fortune through a storefront ministry.
It was a church that opened its arms up to a community that was in need. A community that looked like people that were coming from that part of the third world, coming from Africa, coming from Latin America, looking for a church home.
And Connie works around the clock to make sure nothing in her life falls through the cracks.
Connie was busy doing everything. She's busy at work. She's busy with the church, doing food drives. She's trying to do it all.
There's a part of Connie who wants to prove to Christopher that she can do the hard work. So she's doing everything that she can to get this church up and going, because at the end of the day, she really wants to please him.
2 years after the church opens its doors, the pews are packed.
God is good, not just Sunday. God is good.
And the couple adds to their responsibilities by bringing a new addition into the family.
Connie and Christopher had a girl that they adopted from Nigeria. They're both working, they have the church, and on top of that, they're trying to raise a child. And they're making it all look easy.
So easy that Christopher decides to start a ministry to serve those with disabilities. A healthcare company named Pascon.
The medical supply company that Christopher opens actually provides medical supplies to folks that need them.
It's the same community which their church serves as well. For Christopher, it's synergy. With his skilled wife at his side, Christopher is confident that Pascon will be a success.
There's a lot going on in Connie's life, and certainly a lot on her plate. She does want to help the community, but even more importantly, she wants to help her man. She wants to help Christopher reach his vision.
Their main customers are Medicare beneficiaries.
Medicare is typically for those that are of low or below income and that do not have medical insurance or over the age of 65.
At first, the business seems to stall.
Any new business typically will have a slow start because you're brand new, no one knows you're there.
But then as word gets out, the customers begin to trickle in. And the company's biggest ticket item is a powered wheelchair with a hefty $6,000 price tag.
If I was a member of the community and I had medical insurance, I could go to Connie or Chris and say that I have been prescribed to have a wheelchair. And can you get that for me?
Now, to need a power wheelchair, you need to have serious medical conditions. It needs to be based on the prescription of a doctor who thinks that you need it.
To capitalize on their most profitable item, Christopher starts purchasing large quantities of these wheelchairs at wholesale prices.
They get a wheelchair for $1,000 wholesale. They pay another $1,000, and then Medicaid reimburses them $6,000 for the actual chair itself, and they end up pocketing the remainder of that money.
Thank you. All right. You're welcome, sir. I'll see you soon. All right.
And Christopher starts seeing a profit of thousands of dollars a wheelchair. In fact, the venture is doing so well that Christopher wants to open a second company, and he wants Connie at its helm as sole owner and CEO.
Connie opened up the second company called Horizon, which did the same exact business. She was the 100% owner, the manager, the operator of it.
And between the two companies, over the next year, the money starts rolling in.
They bought a nice house in a very nice neighborhood in Los Angeles. They both drove nice Mercedes. They sent money overseas to buy real estate.
It is the American dream. So everything seems to be going just the way they want it to go.
You go from going to work every day as a nurse to becoming a millionaire. Very drastic lifestyle change.
Connie couldn't be happier with their newfound fortune. But behind their success, the couple is hiding a dirty little secret.
As it turns out, it's all a scam. They are committing a fraud.
Christopher has figured out how to make that money, and Connie's gotten a taste of the good life, and now she is hooked. So now she is going to follow her husband's lead.
Can investigators bring their ride on Easy Street to a dead end before they cover their tracks? Los Angeles church leaders Connie Ikpo and Christopher Iruke live the good life after opening 2 successful medical supply companies.
He goes up, he goes back.
They provide in mobile wheelchairs, and they would submit those claims to Medicare.
For each wheelchair, they're making $4,000. Over time, this is millions of dollars. And it looks to everyone as they're building an empire.
But what these angelic entrepreneurs have really built is a house of lies.
They are committing a fraud. They are selling wheelchairs to people who just don't need them.
It was a get-rich scheme by ripping off Medicare, which operates on the honor system and is vulnerable to disreputable people.
While they keep up their appearances at their church, they no longer keep up the facade of the medical supply company.
It was a medical supply company that had no walk-in clients, no cash register, not the type of thing that you would expect to see if they had a legitimate business supplying medical supplies to the public.
It's a complicated scheme that works in 2 demographics. First, the couple lies to potential patients, conning them into buying wheelchairs that they don't need.
They would tell community members that Medicare was going bankrupt, and so that they would not be able to meet their immediate medical needs, and they may want to go ahead and buy a wheelchair now.
Some patients did receive the wheelchair. When you would go to their house to look at it, it would typically be parked in the garage or a corner of the house, collecting dust and never having been used.
And if their targets can't be persuaded to actually purchase a chair, they pay them for their personal information.
A lot of times they would also, just in exchange for their name and social security number, buy them things that they needed.
Even worse, they're taking advantage of the same group of people they claim to be helping, poor immigrants, many of which are members of their own congregation.
There's a number of things that made them so easy to convince. There was a language barrier. They're immigrants. They're not really familiar with how processes work. They're pastors in the church, and that they're from a vulnerable population. Someone that is very respected in your community asks you, then of course you're going to comply.
In phase 2, Christopher buys up bogus prescriptions from shady doctors to submit to Medicare.
Doctors are being paid who are signing off on these false prescriptions.
Once people start getting large amounts of money from Medicare just by filling out some fraudulent paperwork and delivering wheelchairs, it's a lot of money really quickly, and it's hard to stop.
And it isn't just Christopher getting his hands dirty. Connie is supporting her man's illegal deeds every step of the way.
She was just as involved, submitting the documents that she needed, which means that she's fully aware that she's paying a middle person for the prescription.
In Connie's mind, she can justify what's going on with this illegal activity. They're sending money back to family in Nigeria, and they're making a difference in their community.
Over the next 3 years, the couple continues to preach about sin, but committed on a regular basis. And it's their blatant disregard for appearances that finally puts their medical supply businesses on investigators' radar.
As you dig into some of these companies, indicators of fraud become apparent. For example, a company that's only delivering one type of equipment, as in this case, the most expensive possible equipment, power wheelchairs, and not delivering manual wheelchairs, canes, walkers, other types of things that you would expect to see a legitimate company to supply. They were finding trouble with the billings, and they were questioning the necessity of the wheelchairs that they were being delivered.
The investigators begin looking for proof, prescriptions, that all of these wheelchairs are attached to people who truly need them.
With investigators hot on their heels, Connie and Christopher will stop at nothing to protect their lavish lifestyle.
It was too late now for Connie to back out. She was now entangled in a web of lies.
I don't think she was willing to get caught.
Over the years they were in business, Connie Ikpo and her husband made a killing on the Medicare fraud.
Total in medical claims was $14 million. And in profit, they were making $6.5 million.
Pastors Connie Ikpo and Christopher Iruke's Medicare scam has made them millions of dollars. And the couple is desperate to keep living the dream in Los Angeles.
Chris Iruke and Connie Ikpo were greedy, and they wanted to get as much money as possible, and they weren't going to let the Medicare rules and regulations or anything else get in their way.
Connie's got a lot to lose. She's worked so hard for everything, and she's afraid of losing all of that. But more importantly, she's afraid of losing Christopher. And that's why she's gone along with that scam.
Look, we got to do something to help ourselves.
Alerted that Medicare officials are on the lookout for them, Connie and Christopher try to stay one step ahead of investigators.
Because if we don't, we're in trouble.
They begin to now understand that they are really being scrutinized and that they now are going to have to begin to do some things to keep themselves out of jail.
Panicked, the couple closes the businesses in an attempt to throw investigators off their trail. But they aren't about to turn their back on their millions.
After shutting down Pascon and Horizon, Christopher opens up 2 new stores and just picks up where he left off.
They know that they can't put the new companies in their names, so they cover their tracks and recruit others into their scheme.
They use 2 names from members of parishioners of their church.
They open a new storefront and get back to business as usual.
It's a cat and mouse game. They're trying to avoid getting caught, and they do that by operating under different ownership. Medicare would have no way of knowing, based on the paperwork, that these were all Christopher Iruke and Connie Ikpo's company. They would appear to be other people's companies who don't have the same issues.
And that, again, is another scam.
Connie really should put her foot down, but instead, she's just going to blindly follow along with this scheme.
For the next 6 months, the plan seems to work, until Christopher gets a call from one of his employees.
An investigator shows up to the medical supply store asking for Chris. Of course, the folks that are there give him, no information whatsoever, but do get word to Chris that there is an investigator that's looking for him.
Christopher calls an emergency meeting with their co-conspirators in a park down the street from his house. He's got to figure out how to cover their tracks.
What I do know is that we're in this together.
They give them instructions about not to talk to the police. They give them what we would call throw phones. They come up with code words.
Christopher orders everyone to use their untraceable phones and not to tell police. But what he isn't aware of is investigators have been digging into the couple's lies.
Myself and the agents would go interview some of these beneficiaries who bought wheelchairs, and they would do jumping jacks for us. And so these aren't the types of people that need the power wheelchairs.
A week later, investigators prepare to strike. And Connie and Christopher realize the clock is running out. So they try to erase any evidence connecting them to the scam.
At some point, the medical records were all moved into the church.
Connie spearheads the shredding party. She gathers parishioners and pays them to begin shredding files.
If they get caught, not only is she going to lose this lifestyle that she's become accustomed to, but she's going to lose her man, and that's something that is not on the table for her.
But the feds are waiting. After months of watching them, With a search warrant, they raid the church.
And they seized all the records, including the shredded documents.
Finally, Connie Ikpo and Christopher Iruke are arrested and charged with Medicare fraud.
Connie and Chris have never admitted to their crimes. They both have maintained their innocence.
6 months after her arrest, Connie is convicted of conspiracy to commit fraud and sentenced to 3 years in prison. Christopher is also convicted of conspiracy to commit fraud and 17 counts of healthcare fraud. He's sentenced to 15 years in prison.
They both are responsible for $6.7 million, I believe, to reimburse the government.
Connie took a vow to honor her husband for richer and for poorer, and she took that oath very seriously.
Christopher is the one that led her down this path. He introduced her to the business of Medicare fraud, and I don't think she would have thought of this on her own.
Everybody loved Connie. So obviously this would be a grave shock to the community that she supported for so long.
She certainly at any time could have stopped. She could have shut the whole thing down, but she chose not to. I think the true victims are, unfortunately, the community members of their church and the government.